Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight I've got some real reports of encounters with unknown or unidentified cryptid creatures submitted by the witnesses, and on my channel you won't find any lazy AI narration or scripting or any annoying mid-roll ads. Just true, unexplained stories from real people, just like you, narrated by yours truly. Now if this is exactly your cup of tea, then go ahead, hit the like button, and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And then grab your gear. Let's ride to Cryptid Country.
Number 1. Dear TB, as a teen, I just refused to sleep normal hours, especially on the weekends. Why? Well, that's because the house I lived in, and the house was on a haunted piece of property. You see, staying up usually meant seeing some freaky activity, and growing up in a small English town in Berkshire, well, that's about as exciting as life got. So one night, when I was around 14, I was staying up, staring out my window when I started seeing glowing blue and purple lights coming from the forest behind my house. I thought they were cool, so I just continued staring at them, trying to figure out what they were. Now, the way my house was set up, my bedroom window faced the forest in my back garden, and directly next to my room is a side gate that links to the front part of the house. On either side of the gates are motion sensor lights. So these lights in the forest may not have been paranormal, but what happened next most definitely was. The motion at the front of the gate triggers, casting a faint light into my garden. The night got really silent, with no more owls or crickets, and just became really eerie. The lights in the forest came to ebb and then just die out. I listened carefully as I start to hear scuttling on the wood of the gate. It's muffled, so I slightly crack open my window to get a better look and to listen. Now, this gate is always locked, with a heavy padlock at that. To this day, I've asked my dad if he ever left the gate unlocked at night, and he stands by the fact that unless he's gardening, that gate stays closed. This was spring, so he might have started seeding, so for my own comfort of mind, I'm just going to assume that he left that gate open. Anyways, I hear that gate slowly swing open. The creaks in the wood were so loud against the silent night, and the sound, it was so distinctive. The motion light right underneath my bedroom window switches on. Honestly, to this day, I really can't explain what I saw. Whatever it was, it had this off-white veiny kind of skin texture, and it was about the size of a child. It walked down on all fours and looked kind of sickly. Its hind legs were significantly longer than its front legs, and it looked to have hands with claws. I hate having to link back to creepypasta, but it kind of looked like the Rake. Now, I've gone through the possibilities in my head, trust me. It was too small to be a deer. Any of the deer that frequented our garden was much larger. Also, it had no deer-like features. A badger or a fox with disease is possible. However, I've never seen badgers or foxes with such long limbs and so disproportionate. Also, this thing was completely hairless and almost human-like. The worst part about it to me was how it slowly and silently moved up my garden path before disappearing into the woods. The noises of the night started back up after that, but I was so shook that I didn't sleep that entire night. I'm from England, so I haven't heard of any folklore that matches what I saw. I know that there were occult practices done in the woods behind my house a while back, but I'm pretty sure it was pagan, and hence not inherently bad or demonic. I still don't know what I saw. Signed, Liam. Number 2. Hey biker, I'm recalling my friend's story to the best of my ability. This is all classified, according to him. He was stationed at a base in Iraq. This base was surrounded by a wall that had guard posts at various locations around the wall and 1 or 2 other locations where soldiers would keep post, including a barracks. There was also a big abandoned warehouse on the base that wasn't currently being used. It had huge, heavy doors that opened outward from the middle, which were always closed. Soldiers had to walk past this warehouse when switching posts. Well, one night, when my buddy was in his barracks, gunshots went off. Everyone rushed to get geared up and figure out what was going on. Once they figured out that the gunshots came from inside the base, they went to the location of the shots. 2 soldiers were posted up. Weapons pointed to the old warehouse and were visibly freaked out. One of the doors to the warehouse was pushed slightly open. They yelled at the 2 soldiers to see what was going on, but these guys didn't budge. They said that something big and black was just running inside that warehouse. Once they calmed the 2 guys down, they did a sweep of the thing and found nothing. It took 2 soldiers to push that door shut again. The next night, there was screaming coming from inside the warehouse. Again, they did a sweep and found nothing. The next night, there were more screams. And on the 3rd night, another group of soldiers, shifting locations, opened fire. They basically had the same story as the first group. They said it was fast, and basically moved faster than they could aim or shoot. Again, the door was pushed open, and again it took 2 guys to close it. After this went on for a while, and the soldiers were found to be mentally healthy, a bigger investigation was set up. They pointed some special cameras at the entrance to this warehouse and set up some guys outside and then waited for something to happen. Well, one night the door was pushed open on camera and there was basically a demon that stepped out and started screaming bloody murder. The guards opened fire and this thing sprinted faster than humanly possible back inside the warehouse. Both doors were flung open and this thing just screamed. More soldiers came and did a sweep, but again, found nothing. Around this time, the soldiers at the base started to piece a few things together. They had always known that a village near the base had a curfew and that no one stayed out of their house past nightfall. So, some went to investigate why. A long story short, the villagers told them that there was a god of death in the area, and they dared not stay out past nightfall. Around the time they learned this, a special team came in with more equipment. Bigger gunners were sent in, including my buddy with special recording equipment. They dragged the big double doors open and set up inside that warehouse. It was pitch black, but they could see with their equipment. They set up so 2 guys sat facing each other, making a square of 4 guys total. About 4 hours went by without anything happening. Then, the guy across from my buddy started making a hand signal. He was signaling that something was behind my friend. The guy to the right of my buddy was dozing off, and another soldier across from my buddy was perfectly still. My buddy did a 180 from his chair to a crouch position, giving room for him and the guy across from him to open fire. He said that when he turned around, he just saw this demon, humanoid, around 9 feet tall with piercing eyes and menacing. When he opened fire, the thing was so fast it basically teleported to the side and then up the wall until it was on the ceiling. They continued firing, but the thing was fast and kept appearing behind each of the soldiers, endangering their lives. Eventually, the soldiers got the equipment and abandoned the building. The cameras apparently captured everything. My friend was debriefed and told to never speak of it again, and the building was demolished. The villagers related the demon to an old mass grave near the base, which after the events above was dug up and everyone was given a proper burial. I, without a doubt, didn't recall everything correctly. His version had way more detail. And the way my buddy tells this story, it's so convincing and detailed that it's hard not to believe him. But the story is so incredible that it's very hard to believe at the same time. I wish I could get him to type it out because it's simply terrifying. Signed, Lonnie. Number 3. Dear Tattooed Biker, I had an encounter when I was 9 years old, and I remember it clearly like it was yesterday. I was walking back from my uncle's place in our village near Seward, Alaska. I was walking on the sidewalk, and I saw this man standing on top of my father's house, close to the edge facing west. He was solid black, and he looked like a man. He stood about 7 or 8 feet tall. I shouted at him, and he acted like he didn't hear me. And I said, "Hey you, who are you?" I kept trying to get his attention. It was like I wasn't there. But when I said, Hey you, you're standing on my house, who are you?" It stopped and looked at me for a few seconds. The face seemed normal, like a person's face, until it slowly opened its eyelids and I saw a red glow. Like his eyes were glowing, not like a red light, but a glow. I froze and just stared at him. He stood there, looking at me for 9 or 10 seconds, and looked away and then jumped, really high and far. I'd say he jumped about 40 feet into the air, and about 70 to 80 feet away. And as soon as he seemed to fall down, a pair of very large, leathery wings came out of his back and flapped twice. Just in those 2 flaps, he traveled about 100 feet and then flew right over the high school. Since that day, I never spoke to anyone about it because I thought I saw the devil. It freaked me out so bad that I looked out for it every day to make sure it wasn't around. That was my first encounter with that thing. I've had one more many years later. Its body was like a man's, and its face was like a man's too, but its eyes, those eyes were what made it so scary and weird. And those wings are very long and large and leathery. His whole body was all black, not like skin, but blackness was actually covering him. I really can't explain. I'm not the only one in my village who saw this thing, but after that, there have been many sightings here and in other villages, even to the point that this thing goes into people's houses while they sleep. That happened to someone I know. Signed, Nick. Number 4. Hey Biker, I was wondering if you could share my story, and your listeners maybe give me their thoughts. My fiance and I live in the mountains of Arizona, and we had gone night fishing at an old fish hatchery, which is now a privately owned pond. We were there for a few minutes when we started to hear something rustling around the pond next to us. At first I thought it was just an elk. We'd been here a couple of days before, and there were tracks in the mud along the shore, but my fiance was worried that it might be something else, so he made a fire to try and scare it away. After a while, the rustling stopped, and we relaxed. Not long after, we hear a huge splash from the other pond. We thought that maybe a mountain lion or bear had jumped in trying to get some of the fish, as unrealistic as that sound. But we never heard any more splashing, and it was very unlikely that there was a fish the size of a full-grown man in the pond next door. We didn't hear anything after that, and for a long time until suddenly there was another huge splash in our pond, but I couldn't see where it had come from or what had made it. I was starting to get really creeped out, and the fire was dying out, and I wanted to leave, but my fiance wanted to stay and fish some more. We could hear some more rustling in the reeds near us, and suddenly my fiance just started packing things up and dousing the fire, telling me that he was ready to leave. We had left the car up by the highway by the gate and walked all the way down the dirt road, through the meadow and past some other ponds to get to where we were fishing, so we had a way to walk before we could hop the fence and be back at the car. Every few seconds, he would look behind us and then start walking faster. He told me that he thought there was a bear by the ponds and kept looking back and getting more panicked and walking faster. I was too chicken to look back at what he was obviously looking for. By the time that we were almost back to the car, I was practically jogging to keep up with him, and he was making comments like, "Once we get over the gate, we'll be fine." When we finally did make it to the car, he kept looking back over the meadow and acting antsy until we were driving back home. When I asked him if he had seen the bear, he replied, "I don't know what that was, but it wasn't a bear." He proceeded to tell me about the animal that he had seen and that it had looked right at him while he stood at the edge of the pond. He described it as being as big as a bear, but looking like a half dog, half crocodile mutation of some kind. He said that it was scaly and that they had looked at each other right at the same moment, and the creature had almost all black eyes. He also said that he felt like he was being studied by it, like it was very, very smart. We were a little ways from the pond when he started looking back and walking faster. He said that first he saw the thing sitting on top of the hill by the pond watching us. This freaked him out, so he started walking faster. When he looked again, it had come down the hill and was still looking at us, making him walk even faster and tell me the bogus lie about the bear. He knew very well what a chicken I am, and that I wouldn't look back. When he looked again, it was in the field, still pretty far away, but also still following us. The next time, he said it was on the road right behind us, walking like a cat does when it's stalking its prey. This was when he started making comments about getting over the gate and freaking out over the lantern because it was starting to dim. He's a scout, and I guess the theory is that you have to have a light with you and it will keep almost everything away. I've never seen him so freaked out before, and I didn't know if I should think that maybe he was just seeing things. But he swears up and down that he saw whatever it was. So he came home and looked up giant alligator dog sightings and came across something called the Dorachu. The descriptions of it sound amazingly accurate to what he told me on the drive home, and we kind of freaked ourselves out wondering if the second splash in our pond would have been its mate. I do believe that he saw something that night. He's also sworn that he's never, ever going back out there again. After my parents laughed at us, they suggested that we go back in the morning and look for tracks, but he flat out told me no. I know that this probably sounds like just a crazy story. Those creatures are supposedly mythical creatures from Ireland, and as I understand it, I just don't know how to explain what he swears he saw and how he felt like it was going to eat us. Thanks in advance for reading this. Signed, Yvonne. And there it is. All I have for you tonight. Many of these witnesses are anxious to hear your theories and thoughts about their encounters, so drop a comment below, but please keep it respectful. Sharing stories like these requires real courage, and we thank those who submitted their experiences. If you have an experience with the unexplained that you'd like to share, just send it to the email in the description and your story may wind up in a future video. So thanks for riding with me tonight. I really appreciate you. And as always, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.